When a manufacturing team says, "Our constraint keeps moving," they are usually describing real symptoms, but that does not mean reality. On Monday, machining looks like the problem. By Wednesday, inspection is overloaded. By Friday, packing is behind. Materials are late and one shift is blaming the other. So I understand why it feels like the constraint is moving. But in a variable, multi-step operation, the thing causing disruption today is not always the fundamental thing governing long-term system output. And that distinction is where a lot of wasted improvement effort begins. Because if you mistake every visible problem for the constraints, you can end up chasing issues all over the operation, improving things that feel urgent, but not actually improving total output in the way you expected. For those of you new here, I'm Lawrence Gartside. I work with high-volume manufacturers to understand and unlock hidden capacity and make better capacity decisions. And this is a lot of the work I help with, separating the daily operational noise from the real output constraint. So improvement effort is focused where it can actually change throughput. Now I'm using the word constraint deliberately here. People often say bottleneck in normal conversation, and I understand what they mean, but in my own teaching and the theory of constraints, I'm using constraint in a more precise way. Constraint is the part of the system that is governing the output of the whole system. There is an important distinction between bottlenecks and constraints, and I have another video just on that. But for this video, the key point is simpler. When your constraint appears to keep moving, the first question is not, how do we improve everything? The better question is, are we seeing the true constraint? Or are we reacting to daily operational noise? Because in a real manufacturing and operations environment, there is always noise. Machines stop, people are absent, materials arrive late, and if the operation is spread across multiple areas, different shifts, different departments, or different sites, this becomes even harder to read clearly. So I have plenty of sympathy for the problem. Real operations are complicated. They are made up of dependent steps. There is some random variation, equipment limitations, human decisions, queues, changeovers, downtime, space constraints, and different people interpreting the same system from different angles. So, yes, it can absolutely feel as though the constraint, the biggest problem, which is not the same thing, the biggest problem is moving about. But that feeling can be misleading. If your manufacturing operations have strong demand but can't keep up, take my free Throughput Readiness Assessment. It takes about 3 minutes and it will help you assess whether you're ready to unlock hidden capacity in your operations or what might still be missing. Link in the description below. A classic way to understand this feeling of moving bottlenecks is the Herbie Boy Scouts example from the book The Goal. Definitely read that. In the book, a group of Boy Scouts are walking in single file, trying to collectively, as a system, to walk as fast as possible, their system output rate. They cannot pass each other on the trail. One boy has to walk behind the next, and so on. And this is very similar to a production system where the steps have to happen in a defined order. You cannot typically do process 2 before process 1. You cannot inspect something before it has been produced. The sequence matters. The sequence of the boys in the line matters. Now, in the Boy Scout example, a boy called Herbie is the slowest boy. He is the constraint. His best walking pace governs the maximum possible average rate of the whole group. But that does not mean Herbie is the only boy who ever causes a problem. Another boy might stop to tie his shoelaces. Another might need a drink. Another might need to get a stone out of his shoe. And in that moment, it can look like that boy is the problem. For that moment, he may well be blocking part of the line. But that does not mean he has become the system's constraint. It means a non-constraint part of the system has created a local disruption. That distinction is critical because if you watch the line moment by moment, you may see lots of different boys causing delays. You may conclude the bottleneck keeps moving. But if you step back and understand the system over time, the better question is which part of this system is governing the progress of the whole group. That is still Herbie, the constraint. And in manufacturing operations, the equivalent is not always obvious. The true constraints may be hidden underneath the daily noise. This is where variability and dependent events create confusion. If each process has its own random problems and the processes depend on each other, then any local disruption can appear important. Machine 7 snaps a drive belt. Packing runs out of space. One process works faster than expected and creates a pile of WIP inventory somewhere else. All of these things attract attention. People complain about them. Managers discuss them. Teams launch actions around them. And many of those actions may be sensible in isolation, but the question is not whether the issue is real. The question is whether resolving an issue is an effective use of resources to impact the output of the whole system. That is the difference between reacting to noise and understanding the constraint. If machine 7 keeps snapping a drive belt, maybe that matters a lot. Maybe it is starving the constraint. Maybe it is blocking the constraint. Maybe it is directly reducing throughput through the system. But maybe it's not. Maybe machine 7 has more than enough capacity, even with its problems, to more than keep up with the system. Yes, it's annoying. It can create some local disruption, and people understandably complain about it. But with a good system design, it need not affect the flow through the constraint. And if it does not affect the flow through the constraint, diverting major resources to fix it may not improve total output. This is where many operations waste a huge amount of effort. They give attention to the thing that caused yesterday's firefight. They divert resources to the area with the biggest queue on a Tuesday afternoon. They invest in a department with the most complaints. And again, those problems may be real, but real does not automatically mean strategically important or for the benefit of the system. The place that looks busiest is not automatically the constraint. Sometimes those things are clues. Sometimes they're distractions. The deeper question is which process, resource, or part of the system most consistently determines the throughput of the whole operation. And to answer that with confidence, especially in a complex operation, you often need to understand the speed, availability, and capacity profile of each major process. How fast can each process actually run if it was allowed to on its own? How much time is genuinely available? What downtime does it experience? This is where analysis becomes much more useful than casual observation. And this is one of the reasons my constraint clarity sprint is built around identifying what is really limiting output and where to focus next. Without that clarity, teams often end up arguing from incidents rather than understanding the system. Now, there is an edge case worth mentioning. Sometimes several processes are so close in capacity that when you improve one, the constraint can shift quickly to another area. That can happen. And it's one reason you should not only identify the current constraint, but also understand the wider capacity profile of the system. But still, that is different from saying the constraint moves every time a different department has a problem. Those are not the same thing. A true constraint can move after meaningful change in the system, but the daily movement of visible problems is something else. It's noise, variability, dependent events. It is the consequence of how the system is currently organized. This is why the theory of constraints does not start by saying, go and improve everything. It starts by identify the constraint, then exploiting the constraint, then subordinating everything else to the constraint. And only then considering whether to elevate the constraint, meaning to improve its capability. I'm not going to turn this video into a full explanation of those steps. The important point here is that the sequence of actions exists for a reason. If you do not know what is truly limiting output, then every problem can feel like a priority. And when every problem feels like the priority, the business ends up with too many improvement actions, too many competing opinions, and not enough focus on the thing that actually governs system output. Too many priorities is no priorities. So if your constraint seems to keep moving, the answer may not be to chase it harder. The answer may be to step back and ask whether you are seeing the real constraint at all. Because in a variable, dependent, multi-step operation, the visible problem can move constantly, whilst the underlying system constraint remains constant but unappreciated. Once you understand that, the improvement conversation changes. You can't fix everything. That's stressful, slow, expensive, highly ineffective, practically impossible. Instead, it becomes more about understanding what governs output, protecting that part of the system, and focusing improvements where it will actually change the system's throughput. Are you ready to unlock hidden capacity in your operations? Then have a look at my Throughput Readiness Assessment, link in the description below. Other value propositions, check out my latest book, Constraint and Bottleneck Management, available on Kindle, and my library of operations management training courses on Udemy and LinkedIn Learning, where over 180,000 paying professionals have studied with me. And once again, for you busy manufacturing businesses, check out my free 3-minute Throughput Readiness Assessment, link below. Crack on!